So, all right, this thing's recording. Here's how it works. This is Friday. It's our half day. For people that aren't here, they're going to be able to watch the timeline and see it and go through the events. Once we get through this, I brought something in to show you guys. It's a newspaper. We're going to talk about why it's awesome and why it's one of the things that I hang up in my room at home. We will also be watching a short clip on the invasion of D-Day. Have you guys heard of this D-Day, the invasion of Normandy, 1944? I'm going to show you a clip from a documentary. It's my favorite documentary that I've ever seen, and I'm not lying about it. It's awesome. It's one of the few documentaries we'll actually be watching the entire thing. It's like an hour and a half. It'll take us over 2 days to get through, but it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So here are the events. Again, for people that aren't here, we started in 1914 and it ended in 1941. We're extending it. It's my bad. I want to make it to go to the end of the war. I was going to do two separate timelines, but then I realized that's a stupid idea. So we're going to do just one. Are we cool with that? Okay, so 1914, did we get the first date? What's the first one?
Start of World War I.
Yeah, start of World War I. 1919 is the, not the start, but the, yeah, it's the end. This is the end of World War I. Let's see. Ryan, do you know, can you tell me what the treaty's called? Do you remember? This is tough. We haven't talked about it in a long time. Kyle.
Treaty of Versailles.
Treaty of Versailles. Does that make something about Treaty of Versailles? It's called the Treaty of Versailles. Versailles. Versailles is a city in France. Treaties are almost always named for the cities that they were signed in. So, Treaty of Versailles. 1921. This is a tough one. This is a presidential event on our timeline. A president becomes president, takes office. They're elected in 1920. Andre, do you know who that is?
Is it Teddy?
It's not Teddy Roosevelt. It's not Franklin Delano Roosevelt. None of the Roosevelt boys. Roosevelt's gonna be in 33. Yeah. It's not Woodrow Wilson. It's the guy who comes right after him. It's not Coolidge. It is our guy. Anyone know? Starts with an R. Or I'm sorry, an H. Harding. It's Harding. Yeah, Harding. Warren G. Harding. Yeah, Warren G. Harding. Harding becomes president. I just want to get this in here because we had taken notes a long time ago about the Roaring Twenties, and we said that all of the presidents of the 1920s, they were all which political party? Republican. They're all conservative and pro-business. Do you guys remember that? We went through that. So Harding passes away. Sadly, passes away in 1923, and Coolidge becomes president. That's the guy, Silent Cal, Calvin Coolidge, becomes president in 1923. Harding, by the way, there's a rumor that Harding's, and I don't think this is true, so let me just start by saying that, but there's a rumor that Harding's wife may have poisoned him. Harding didn't really want to be, he's not the type that his temperament and attitude and personality is not great for president, like the qualities a president would need. His wife was the type that she had stars in her eyes. She wanted to be first lady. She wanted her husband to be the president. She was kind of that figure that drives the marriage. And Harding was about to be just absolutely smeared by scandals going on in the 1920s. There's like 3 scandals that happened really, really quickly, and they were all about to become public. The worst one was called Teapot Dome. And so Harding, as he goes off on this like little mini vacation to Alaska, his wife's very clear about the fact that her husband and her name is about to be smeared real bad. And then he passes away, and Coolidge becomes president, and all of a sudden all those scandals, they pin him on other people as opposed to Harding himself. I don't think it is, but they investigated it. The Congress actually opened up investigations and interviewed people, and it's always one of those like, I wonder, did she do it?
In a way she kind of saved him.
Yeah, in a way.
Well, obviously not.
I don't know if I would be, humiliation, death. I'd take the humiliation probably. But yeah, I know what you mean. So she in a way, I don't think she did anything, but people, I don't know. It's like one of those. Conspiracy theories. Yeah, there's conspiracy theories about Kennedy. You know which conspiracy theory? I think Andre, you were talking about. Was you were asking me about Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
The more I read into that, I read some more into that, and I listened to a couple of historians talk about this. There are some pretty shaky circumstances around Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. It's something I'm going to look into more this summer. I want to read more into it. But the conspiracy goes that, like, the United States, the CIA might have been aware or even in on Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. I have never seen any proof of it, but I've actually read a couple articles of people like, it is pretty sketchy. It's something I want to read more into. What about Tupac? I don't know. You guys, it would be naive to think that, like, the United States doesn't have plots to overthrow leaders or get people killed. It happens. Osama bin Laden, right? We tried to assassinate Fidel Castro. There's like several plots to assassinate Fidel Castro. He's the guy from Cuba. Have you guys heard this name, Castro, before? John F. Kennedy, when he becomes president, he tries to have this secret plan called the Bay of Pigs invasion to assassinate Castro. It goes terribly wrong. And he looks like an idiot. He has to go.
Cuban Missile Crisis?
That's what it leads to. So we'll talk more about it. Cuban Missile Crisis is crazy. 1963, literally the world was on the brink of nuclear war. It was like World War III they just found out not till the 1990s that the Russians had nuclear missiles set up and ready to be launched at the United States from Cuba. Cuba is only 90 miles off the coast of the United States. If you go to, anyone been to Key West?
Yeah.
Have you been to Key West? So the Florida Keys, you know what I'm talking about, those string of islands you could drive all along the bridges. Key West is actually closer to Havana, Cuba than it is to Miami, Florida, which is kind of weird to think about. So the Soviet Union, the Russians had missiles pointed at, they could have hit as far north as, I don't know if they could have reached Washington, D.C., but I can tell you cities like Atlanta, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, anywhere in Texas, they could have all just been in smoke. And the Russians had orders that if we attacked their ships off the coast of Cuba, that they were going to fire their missiles up. We were close to having nuclear warfare. That would have been bad, really bad. So 29 is Herbert Hoover, and also what?
Stock market crash.
Yeah, good job. Stock market crash. Herbert Hoover and the stock market crash. The stock market crash then leads us into the Great Depression. So Herbert Hoover takes office. That same year, the stock market crashes in October, and it leads us right into the Great Depression. So this is going to be the Great Depression. Great Depression. Sorry, my writing's a little sloppy. I need a bigger piece of chalk. 1931 is an important date. This is the beginning of what kind of leads us toward the start of World War I. Most people do not call this the start of World War I. Most people would say this is just like build-up. Yeah. Oh, did I say two? I'm saying one, aren't I? That's the problem. It's two. World War II. My bad. I was just talking about World War I. So most people would say this is the start of the build-up of World War II. Not one. I apologize. This is when Japan invades China. And because we're so American-centric, we don't talk about this a whole heck of a lot. But Japan invades this part of China. It's called Manchuria. You might see it that way in your book. I don't know how your book says it. But they invade Manchuria, and Japan literally goes on a rampage throughout China. They take over the Philippines. They take over Korea. They take over Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, New Zealand. They are just ripping through countries. And the Chinese are expanding militarily and taking over a lot of territory. I'm going to show you guys on Monday on Google, on the Google Maps app, and show you how much territory Japan just conquered in a very short amount of time. The reason Pearl Harbor happens, you guys, is we were so terrified of Japan taking over all this territory, we ordered them to stop and we cut off our oil supplies to them. We put an embargo on all our supplies. Said, Japan, if you don't stop expanding, you don't get anything from us. No help, no oil, no nothing. And it was crippling their economy. They needed oil from us. Up until the 1940s, the United States was the world's largest producer of oil. Doesn't that sound weird to think now? The U.S. was the world's largest exporter of oil. The U.S. was pumping out 2/3 of all oil production in the 1940s. Now it's kind of reversed. The Middle East is the primary producer of oil, and we've become very interested in the Middle East as that trend has happened. But anyways, Japan invades Manchuria, and this and what Japan does is actually going to be the reason, distant future, why we fight in Korea and Vietnam. Just so you guys know, we fight both wars there. 1933, this is important here. FDR takes office. Or becomes president. FDR becomes president. This is also, ironically, the same year that Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. We like to think of Hitler as, well, he is a terrible, insane maniac, but he was elected. I hope you guys understand that. He was democratically elected and rose up through the ranks of his political party. And once he got to be chancellor, he started doing, unconstitutional things and consolidating power. He wound up going so far as to make people swear their oath of allegiance to him and not the German Constitution. I mean, he was a megalomaniac. But his beginnings, man, I think he was a painter. Anyone know? I think he was a painter. Yeah, he was a painter, and then that's a big leap from painter to crazy dictator that's murdering. I mean, millions of Jews are going to be murdered in the Holocaust, and we're going to talk more about that. So sad, so sad. They're having a Holocaust survivor come in and speak to the sophomores and freshmen, but they're doing it on the day that we're going to go to the college visit, so we're not going to be able to see it. All right, so 1933, FDR and Hitler. 1939 is when Germany invades Poland. This is the beginning of World War II. Germany invades Poland, which spells disaster for Polish Jews. I'm going to circle this. This is the beginning of World War II. This is when it starts. America does not join at this point in time. We want to stay out of it. Just like World War I, when World War II erupts, we would like to stay out of it, but we don't tend to do that well. Yeah?
Isn't it over like 6 million Jews?
Yeah, 6 million. And we got the total number of Jews killed is during the Nuremberg trials. Maybe you've heard of these. This is where we prosecuted top Nazi officials and sentenced some to death, and some did long jail terms. The Nuremberg trials become very popular. There was a top Nazi officer on the witness stand. And the Germans kept meticulous records of what they did in the concentration camps, but then as the Russian army and the U.S. and the British army started closing in, what did they do with those documents? They burn them all. They realize that they're doing some terrible things and they don't want the evidence to be there. So they burn these documents. And from my understanding, and I'd have to research a little bit more into it, I don't know who the guy was, but this guy's on the witness stand, and they say, well, how many Jews do you think were killed in the Holocaust? And he said, if I had to estimate, it'd be about 6 million. And they figured that was probably the closest, most accurate estimate. And that's what they go off of. But no one really knows how many Jews died in the Holocaust. I mean, it's just, there's no way of telling how many died. And if you ever get a chance to go to Washington, D.C., go to the Holocaust Memorial Museum. Isn't it moving? Andre, would you say it's moving? Yeah,
And
the ghettos.
They were so small. It was like me standing up, I would have to put my head through the
Oh yeah, it was atrocious. And there's a big difference, and we'll talk more about this, between concentration camps and death camps. Death camps are where you went to die. Concentration camps, you went to work. And a lot of times you see these, once the war is really picking up its pace, Jews are being shipped in on trains, and they've been starved, or they're not in good health, and they get off these trains. Women would wind up pricking their fingertips. Do you guys know why they did this? So they bleed, and then they take the blood and they would brush it on their face because they wanted to look healthier. Because depending on how healthy you looked, depended on whether you got to go into the work camp line or you were sent towards the death camp line. I'm dead serious. And what's the most famous camp that we know about? You heard of Auschwitz? That's actually, it was both. So it's like Auschwitz-Birkenau or something. I can't remember the second part of it. Auschwitz was the death camp part. The other part was, right there on a facility, was the work camp part. It was a dual one, yeah.
My mom went to Germany her senior year when she went here. And
Yeah.
They went to the Holocaust Museum over there, and she said it was like the saddest thing she's ever been.
It's sad. We have a lot of the stuff at the Holocaust Memorial in Washington, D.C. is on loan from some of the places, from some of the Holocaust museums in Europe. They have the shoes exhibition. Do you see the shoes out there when you're there? They have a whole room of shoes. All of the shoes that were piled up from people that would go to the gas chambers, they would make them take their shoes off. They didn't want to waste anything. And they have shoes on loan. It's just a whole room, like an entire room of shoes. And it's just, it's moving. You go in there, you feel sad, but I mean, it's just like, you're like, wow, this is history. This really happened. And it's an experience for sure. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie The Pianist?
The Pianist? No, I haven't.
It's,
Oh my god.
it's a,
Oh my god.
it's a Jew, and it's during the Holocaust, and like shows like all the stuff that he went through. It's actually really good.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it. There are a couple good movies, and we'll see. I mean, it's one, we used to offer a Holocaust class. Let me keep getting through this timeline real quick, but I do want to talk more about this. This is kind of just an intro to World War II. We're going to talk a lot more about all this stuff. So, 1941 is Pearl Harbor. The bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese, okay? By the Japanese. The next big event that I want you to know happens in November of 1942. So I kind of botched this. This should be 42. I want you to know this because this is a very little known fact, and I think it is important. The U.S. starts fighting German troops, Nazi soldiers, in 1942. It is not in Europe. Most people think the first time we're fighting Nazi soldiers is in Europe. The first place the U.S. starts fighting Nazi troops is actually in North Africa. We fight them in Tunisia. It's called Operation Torch, and it's very little known. We actually fight from North Africa up, and then we invade Sicily. You know, Sicily's the football that Italy's kicking.
Yeah.
The little piece of land that...
Operation what?
It's called Torch, yeah. So what it is it's the U.S. begins fighting in North Africa. In North Africa against the Germans. It's called Operation Torch. And it's against the Nazis. The reason we did this is because Hitler's army was so well trained, especially his European army. Like, we were fighting his less superior troops there. It's like where if you weren't that great of a fighter, you're sent there. It was like our experiment, like, okay, how well trained are our troops? And we had a lot of failures in our first landings. We land on the beachhead in North Africa and Tunisia, and it doesn't go well. We get smoked pretty bad. But then we rally and come back. This is where Dwight D. Eisenhower makes his first appearance. Dwight D. Eisenhower is going to be a president, and he's going to be a very popular president. We'll talk more about him. 1944 is D-Day, right? D-Day. This is something that you guys have heard about before, I'm pretty sure. It is the invasion of Normandy. It's in France. It's the United States and the British, and there's some Canadian troops and a hodgepodge of other troops from other places. Invasion of Normandy. This is us trying to reconquer Europe. Hitler owns. He's invaded and taken over France, Poland, Belgium. I mean, he's taken over the European theater. And so this is our attempt to start taking that back. Very bloody. We're going to watch a little clip of it if we got time. We got 50. 50 today. So we got 10 minutes. We're all right. Next thing that I want to know, there's only three more events. The next one is in 1943. 1943. And it's called the Tehran, Tehran Conference. Tehran Conference. They plan D-Day. Sorry, I put 1944 one first. I apologize. They plan D-Day at the Tehran Conference. Do you know where Tehran's the capital of? It's not. It's a good guess.
Well,
It's a Middle Eastern country that we would never have a conference in today.
Syria.
It's actually in Iran. It's the capital of Iran. It's Tehran. We meet there because no one would, it's the capital of Iran. And we meet there with Stalin, and Roosevelt comes for us, and Churchill is the British guy. And they plan D-Day. And it's a secret meeting. They don't tell anyone they're going to be there. Very secretive, yeah.
well, the capital of Albania is Tehran, right, too, it's just spelled differently, right? It's like T-I-R.
For what?
Of Albania.
Oh, I don't know. It could be. You would know more than I would. I wouldn't know. This is also, by the way, called Operation Overlord. Operation Overlord. Overlord. Operation Overlord. Colin, do you have something you can say?
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Operation Overlord. 1945, there's two events that we need to know from 1945. One is that Germany surrenders in May of 1945. So like here, Germany surrenders. And I'm brushing over stuff, but I just want to get you the big picture. One right now. Germany surrenders. And then in 1946, August of 1946, the last significant event are the atomic bombs. The U.S. drops the atomic bombs on Japan. Yeah, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's actually really sad. The story kind of playing into this, the atomic bombs. You guys are familiar that we dropped atomic bombs on Japan? The reason that Truman does this, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt dies in April. So he dies in April, and then by August, Truman, who steps in as the vice president, he's got to decide whether he wants to drop the first atomic bombs ever in U.S. history, or in world history, ever to be seen. And basically they tell Truman, if you're going to invade Japan, you're probably going to lose close to 1 million troops, just so you know, because the Japanese, their culture is like fight to the death. They don't surrender. It's like part of culture and seen as like, what is it? It's seen as, that's the word I'm looking for. Dishonorable to surrender. So like there's fighting in the Pacific that happens against the Japanese where you have civilians committing suicide in mass numbers as opposed to surrendering. We're talking like women and children jumping off cliffs. Yeah. 1945, the very end of 1945. And we picked the sites for the atomic bombs rather ruthlessly. If you think about what's the biggest city in Japan, if you wanted to inflict the most damage, what would you pick? Say it loud. Tokyo, yeah. We picked Nagasaki and Hiroshima because those were two cities. They were not military cities. They were not like war factory cities. We wanted to pick cities that had been untouched by the war, so we knew just how much damage the atomic bombs could cause. We didn't want to bomb a city that had already been bombed. We wanted to bomb a city that was untouched. Nagasaki, or Hiroshima, I'm sorry. Hiroshima is like an old cultural city. I mean, it is not like a industrial war-producing city. It was a cultural, historic city, and we drop atomic bombs. 80,000 people die instantaneously, incinerated by this atomic bomb. 120,000 people are going to die by the week's end. I mean, it's brutal. And then thousands more die of radiation exposure and cancer and all that others. I mean, it's brutal. 2 days later, we drop another one on Nagasaki. It's more hilly, so the radiation spread not as far. It kills, I think, 40 or 50,000 people. It's crazy. Yeah.
I have a question on the presidents. So
Yeah.
why, back then, did they all rise through ranks of the army? Did that happen a lot?
Yeah.
Now it's all Ivy League guys.
Sure. So even some of these guys, though, were more. So you get both Ivy League guys and Army people. It's just because we fought more wars in that time period. We haven't fought that many widespread wars. I mean, we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, but those are unpopular wars. It's less apt that you're going to have a general that's going to become president in a war that's largely unpopular. But a guy like Eisenhower fought in World War I. He fought in World War II. He became the supreme Allied commander in World War II. He led the D-Day invasion. Eisenhower actually wrote a speech the day before D-Day. This is a little-known fact. He wrote a speech the day before D-Day, and it was a speech publicly apologizing for the failure of D-Day. And he had it on hand just in case D-Day was a failure. So he was prepared to give this speech apologizing to the nation and to the public for the loss of their sons and brothers. But it was a success. So Eisenhower is this guy that becomes this people look up to him because they think of him and D-Day, and World War II is a popular war. I mean, people support the war. When people support the war, we good?
That's Friday.
All right. When people support the war, you get war heroes. And so I'll give you another example of an Ivy League guy who was a war hero as well. World War II veteran, most people don't know this, is John F. Kennedy. He fought in World War II. He was in a terrible assignment. I'll talk more about it. It's an interesting story. But John F. Kennedy had this. He's from a very wealthy Massachusetts family. His dad was very wealthy. His family made their money, actually, speaking of the 1920s and the Roaring '20s, his family made their money selling illegal cigarettes and booze during Prohibition. And his dad got him this very like fluffy, cushy military job post. He was in someplace warm, like it was very, very like fluffy, easy job. And he wound up fooling around with the sergeant's wife on the base. That's not a good idea. And his dad was so angry they made him transfer. And the people that were so angry, they transferred him to this like very, very, very risky operation in Asia. He was on what was called a PT boat, and these are boats that were trying to stop Japanese battleships from crossing back and forth in the Pacific. And they're these little gunner ships that have a couple torpedoes on them and a couple machine guns, and they're supposed to be shooting at these giant Japanese battleships. And they were sleeping one night. And the battleship mistakenly ran over their boat. Didn't even see it coming, and it cut it in half. Kennedy's thrown from the water, hurts his back. He helps his crew survive. A couple of them are killed instantaneously. Helps his crew survive, swims out into the ocean and flags the ship down, comes back as a war hero, and that's how he became popular. And then he went to Harvard, so he was a Harvard grad, a war hero. It helped his popularity. He wasn't even supposed to be. He had an older brother who was the Kennedy that they thought they were grooming to be president. His oldest brother was going to be the guy, and his older brother died flying an airplane in World War II and got shot down. And his older brother died. So then Kennedy comes back, becomes a war hero, and becomes the youngest president ever elected. Kennedy also is the only what president? He's the only Catholic president that we've ever had. Anyways, let me get this last one. Okay, so the atomic bombs in Japan. I'm going to show you guys this in the last couple of minutes. This will be how we end because we get out 50. We're going to watch this whole documentary, so don't worry, we'll see it. But the thing that really intrigues me about this newspaper, I have the whole newspaper, but the thing that I like the best is D-Day, we lost over 4,000 soldiers killed and 10,000 casualties and wounded people. But this Detroit newspaper, the day after, June 7th, 1944, if you notice the headline, it says the initial D-Day invasion, I'll come that way too, the initial D-Day invasion cost what? 3 ships. This is called selective reporting, guys. This is when you have newspapers choosing the information they want the public to read. This is how you create perception among the public to support the war. You want people to buy bonds and loan you money in the war. You do this by making them think that the war is going well. One of the wars we're going to talk about, it's searching for me. There it goes, it found me. One of the things we're going to talk about in the wars coming up is when people can see what's going on, they're less apt to support the brutality of war. Vietnam's going to be the first war that we actually have televised, and it has a huge impact on how many people are angry about Vietnam and what's going on. Again, if you want to take a look at this, you know that. This is June 7th, 1944. Is it? Yeah, I have the whole newspaper. It's pretty cool. It was just in my great aunt's attic. She was, we were cleaning it out after she passed away, found this stack of newspapers, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So again, timeline. There it is. We'll talk more about these events next week. This is kind of just a little intro. Nice little 30-minute